It is Thursday, March 26th. I'm Sam Seder.
And I'm Lucy Steiner. Which one of these stories will you be talking about today?
The Senate unanimously passed a $2 trillion coronavirus stimulus bill late last night after Bernie Sanders stood up to preserve unemployment benefits. Joe Biden dodges a new Me Too accusation by a former staffer. Meanwhile, the pandemic exacerbates social divides within the United States and around the world. Ireland nationalizes its health sector so fast, you'd think it was easy. And lastly, some news networks will stop running Donald Trump's coronavirus briefings because they're too full of lies. Naturally, Trump once again blames the media for his failures.
You're listening to Majority.fm's AM Quickie, and these are the stories you need to know.
The United States Senate voted 96-0 last night to approve a $2.2 trillion emergency spending bill in response to the coronavirus pandemic. Demands from factions in both parties delayed passage, and nobody got everything they wanted. Few Republican senators, including Lindsey Graham of South Carolina, had objected to provisions providing unemployment benefits to displaced workers. But Vermont Senator and Democratic presidential candidate Bernie Sanders held the line on workers' benefits, and with support from Democratic leadership, forced some oversight on a new $500 billion slush fund to be doled out to corporations at the discretion of Donald Trump. What Americans will see most directly as a result of the bill's passage, $1,200 in checks for most adults and $500 for most children directly from the federal government. It is, as worker advocates noted, not nearly enough, especially given the scope of the crisis that is unfolding and what other countries are doing for their people. Meanwhile, former Vice President and supposed Democratic Party presidential frontrunner and presumptive nominee Joe Biden was accused of sexual assault by a former staffer, Tara Reade. Part of Reade's story came out in The Intercept earlier this week, but more details emerged in an interview yesterday with Rolling Stone's Katie Halper. Reade said in 1993, Biden put her against a wall and without consent, quote, penetrated me with his fingers. When I pulled away, he pointed at me and said, "You're nothing to me." The Biden campaign offered no response. The candidate did, however, hold an online soiree targeting younger Americans who have so far, by overwhelming margins, rejected his candidacy. It attracted fewer than 3,000 viewers online, and judging by online commentary, many of those were waiting for him to say something they could make fun of on social media. Tune in later today on the Majority Report for more on that bill that was passed last night in the Senate. America is the new epicenter of the global coronavirus pandemic, with New York emerging as the nation's own hotspot. Hospitals are overwhelmed and crucial medical supplies are still unavailable in the quantities they're needed. The state's morgues are full. By this weekend, officials expect they will be over capacity. North Carolina and Hawaii are also reported too many dead bodies to handle. Although Governor Cuomo has been receiving plaudits in some quarters for his handling of the crisis, many widely touted measures crumble under scrutiny. For instance, prisoners upstate who are supposedly making hand sanitizer on Cuomo's orders told Vice News they were not manufacturing anything, but rather putting a commercial product in new bottles labeled NYS Clean. Officials in San Francisco said yesterday they expect a crisis on par with New York's. California Governor Gavin Newsom placed a moratorium on mortgage payments. It emerged that half the state's infections are among people between the ages of 18 and 49 years. Colorado will be ordering residents to stay home. Idaho already has. In Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania, garbage collectors refused to pick up trash until they received hazard pay and protective gear. Pentagon, meanwhile, said it would halt all overseas travel for U.S. service members and their families for 60 days, with a few exceptions, including troops leaving Afghanistan. Mexico's left-wing president promised to bail out the poor in his country rather than the banks and big companies. Brazil's fascist ruler said coronavirus is not a problem. He called it the little flu. But drug gangs in the favelas are taking the pandemic more seriously and have reportedly imposed strict curfews. A resident of the so-called City of God, a favela made famous by the movie of the same name, told The Guardian, quote, "The traffickers are doing this because the government is absent. The authorities are blind to us. I guess the drug gangs want to have some living, breathing customers when all of this is over." 1 in 3 Canadians expects to miss a mortgage or rent payment in the coming months, and 2/3 either have lost work or expect to. This according to a new survey reported by the national broadcaster. But even conservative provinces are taking measures to aid workers and tenants. In Ireland, the government nationalized the entire healthcare sector for the first time. It was necessary, in the words of the country's public health commissioner, because competition between public and private sectors have created problems in delivering care.
Majority.fm's AM Quickie is fueled by JustCoffee.coop. Just Coffee is a worker-owned coffee roaster based in Madison, Wisconsin that has sponsored the Majority Report for nearly a decade. Check out their collection of fair trade roasts, including our own Majority Report blend. And regardless of what you order, receive 10% off your order when you use the code MAJORITY at checkout. And all shipping is free. That's coupon code MAJORITY at justcoffee.coop.
The G7 group of major industrialized nations was supposed to issue a joint statement yesterday. It did not. The reason? Trump's Secretary of State, the thoroughly unqualified fundamentalist Christian zealot Mike Pompeo, insisted that two specific words be included. Those words, in the following order: Wuhan virus. That's right, the White House prevented international action on the number one most urgent crisis facing humanity because representatives of 6 other countries, including 3 former Axis powers, thought the language Trump's henchmen demanded was racist, unfair, and needlessly divisive. The president himself seems to be losing it, though this hasn't been yet reflected in his approval ratings. Yesterday, he called reports that he was isolated in the White House fake news. And you know what that means? That means they're true. He also said that the lamestream media were trying to hurt his re-election prospects by keeping businesses closed, and that who he called the real people were just itching to get back to work during a global pandemic. Right. Without me, Trump said, quote, you wouldn't even have a country left. Also yesterday, his campaign sent out cease and desist letters to television stations that aired an ad criticizing his handling of the pandemic. CNN, NBC, and some NPR affiliates announced they would stop airing his live press briefings because they contained too many lies. And Americans around the country began receiving mailers from the Federal Centers for Disease Control that promoted President Trump in big, bold, black type, one of the benefits of incumbency. And now for some quicker quickies.
Quicker quickie.
The terrorist who killed 51 Muslims in Christchurch, New Zealand last year reversed himself yesterday and pled guilty to all charges. Brenton Tarrant, age 29, from Australia, sent written instructions to his lawyers to change his plea. His reasons remain unclear. Victim families were relieved by the news. Sentencing hearings will follow. 2 years ago, a group of federal prosecutors were ready to charge Walmart over its role in the prescription opioid abuse crisis. But then Trump's political appointees got wind of the charges and killed the indictments. The story finally came out yesterday thanks to ProPublica. Rod Rosenstein played a special role in derailing the case to save Walmart, saying, quote, we're all capitalists here. A retired Federal Bureau of Investigation agent, Robert Levinson, held in Iran since 2007, is dead. This comes according to his family, which made the announcement yesterday. Reportedly working undercover for the Central Intelligence Agency, Levinson was the longest-held hostage in U.S. history. Details remain vague. The CIA long denied his employment. The Turkish government charged 20 Saudi citizens in the murder of Washington Post columnist Jamal Khashoggi. 2 of the men charged reported directly to Saudi Crown Prince Mohammed bin Salman. All were alleged to be directly involved in Khashoggi's 2018 murder in the Saudi embassy in Istanbul, reportedly on MBS's orders. Arrest warrants were issued, but the trials will be held in absentia. And so it goes.
Quicker quickie.
That's it, folks. Thanks for listening to Majority.fm's AM Quickie. Lucy?
Thank you, Sam. Don't forget to check out the Majority Report today at noon, wherever your podcasts are found.